Welcome to the Josh Hall Web Design Show. Helping you build better websites and create a web design business that gives you freedom and a lifestyle you love.
Hey friends, welcome into the podcast. This is episode 48, and it is going to be the most fun you could possibly have listening to a podcast because we are going to talk about website compliance. Yes, we are going to cover some of the unfun things when it comes to websites because in this episode, we're going to talk about things like ADA compliance, GDPR. We're going to talk about privacy policies and all of the legality side of websites that are, look, frankly, not the most fun thing to go into, but are nonetheless very, very important. And this is going to be super beneficial for you and your clients. And for this talk, I've brought in somebody who knows a lot about this subject, Hans Skillrud, who is actually somebody who sold his web design agency and started a company called Termageddon, which is a service and a software that updates policies automatically for you and your client websites when updates happen to the laws, depending on whether you're stateside or abroad, depending on certain states that you're in. This is the software that my agency actually uses. We have a white label agency account with them to where this is something we offer to our clients to where they can pay us an extra service a month or they can pay us extra a month for this service and they can be completely compliant, which is really, really important no matter what industry you're in. And what I've done in this episode here is I brought Hans on to talk about the things that you can do for not only your website, but for your clients as well, because there are some basic things that we can do to make sure we are compliant so that we don't put ourselves in a vulnerable position for lawsuits, quite frankly. And to be honest, a lot of it has to do with just disclosures, which you're going to hear about. But there's also a lot of really practical things that, quite frankly, I don't want to deal with. Like, I don't want to spend my time looking through law documents. That sounds like the worst thing in the world for somebody like me, which is why I've partnered with Termageddon and Hans and his company do that stuff for me, and they're very affordable. And before we dive into this, I do want to say, if you are intrigued by this, if you want to learn more, definitely reach out to them. If you are interested in using Termageddon, I actually have a special coupon and a special discount that you can use. It'll be in the show notes for this episode, but there's a special deal for agency owners, and there's also a special discount off for solopreneurs as well, so you can give them a go. And again, you can basically cover your butt so you don't expose yourself to potential lawsuits because your website isn't compliant. Now, this is the unfun stuff with websites, but if you want to talk about something that is fun, I'm going to recommend you check out my website design course. That's what this episode is brought to you by because, again, we're going through some stuff that is not so fun, but an area that I absolutely love is the design aspect of websites. I think it's probably the most fun thing with websites apart from some of the more marketing and content related stuff that I'm getting into now, but I created my website design course to help those of you who want to have a better eye for design, want to have fun building websites, but also want to make sure that your websites convert, because that's the big thing. There's no use in having a pretty website that doesn't actually convert the users to either clicking a button or signing up or doing whatever the main call to action is for the site. So if you're interested in upping your design game, join my website design course today, and you can check out some student reviews because it's made a big impact with everyone who's gone through it, and it's been awesome. So I want you to have fun doing web design, and you can do that through my website design course. Now on to some stuff that isn't so fun, but is nonetheless super, super important. We're going to talk website compliance. Please join me in welcoming my guest, Hans Skillrud from Termageddon, and let's have some fun, as much fun as we can. Hans, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We were joking because we had we had a call set up because my web design agency uses your company Termageddon for all of our ADA compliance and GDPR and all this scary privacy policy stuff that's going on with the web. And we just had a little chat to talk more about that, to get to know each other. And then I stopped you before we got too far and I said, hey man, do you want to do a podcast on this? Because we're about to get into some really good stuff. And I didn't want to just keep it between us. I want to share this with my audience. So thanks for being flexible and welcome to the show. Before we get started, why don't you just let everybody know where you are and what you do with Termageddon?
Awesome. And I guess before I jump into that, I do want to note, I'm sorry I'm a little unshaven. Josh and I had just a off the cusp meeting, and it's now turned into a live podcast. So I apologize. This is the face you have to look at while I'm talking. Yeah, my name is Hans. I'm the co-founder of Termageddon. We are a privacy policy generator. We help companies, small businesses, nonprofits, avoid privacy-related fines and lawsuits via our privacy policy generation tool. With our tool, you can get a privacy policy that's compliant with all applicable laws. And what's cool about our technology is that after you implement our code into your website, we can monitor and control what that policy says. So when new laws go into effect or existing laws are amended, we push updates to the policies, helping them stay compliant when the laws change.
And you're in Chicago, right?
I'm in Chicago, yes. And where I'm at is Chicago. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, we were chatting because I'm in Columbus and I love Chicago. Chicago's kind of like the bigger Columbus, but I know you're familiar with Columbus as well. So
I'm in love with Columbus. I like Chicago. I'm in love with Columbus. So.
I mean, there's just nothing better than just Midwestern folk, right? I mean, nothing against the East Coasters, the West Coasters, but when Midwest guys get together, we know a Midwest guy when we get together. But awesome to have you on, man. I appreciate. I'm unshaven as well. We're both looking a little scrappy, but hey, that's web design life. And for everybody who's watching this on YouTube, your background is like none other than I've had any guess, because you've got like a legit spaceship in the background.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I work in a spaceship. No, in reality, I'm in my basement, and my fiance said you can have this set up in the basement in the back. So that's where I'm at basically all the time during the work days.
Awesome, man. So yeah, like I said, my agency has been using you for quite a few months now. So I was familiar with Termageddon, and I think a great place to start would be why this is so important. Like, I think most web designers know, I mean, a lot of clients are completely unaware of this stuff, but the fact is privacy laws and policies are not only different between countries, but they're different between states. So for us stateside, this is huge. And we were talking before we went live here, and maybe we can start with this. If you are collecting information, name and email on a contact form, I guess that's a great place to start, Hans. What do we need to do? Like, do we need to like just say that, we collect your data? Are there like disclaimers we need to put? Like, why is this important, and where do we need to start with all this?
Sure. So I'm going to start by saying that privacy laws have been around for a while. They're just getting more intense as of late. And I was an agency owner for 7 years. I'll be the first to admit I used to copy and paste privacy policy templates for a living. And, things are changing though. Things are getting different. And as time was going on, I myself started to feel a little uncomfortable copying and pasting a legal document for my clients and thinking, this doesn't feel that right. And that intuition led to Termageddon ultimately. But really, I want to talk about what's happening in America, and then we'll talk about beyond America. So privacy laws exist to protect the personal information of their citizens. And what I mean by personal information, great example, name and email. That is personally identifying information, meaning you will know someone if you have that type of information. You'll be able to identify them. It's that simple. And privacy laws exist to protect that information from having companies take it without properly disclosing what they're doing it for or why they're taking it. So as a business owner, you may need to comply with privacy laws. So right now, that might not seem like a big deal until you realize a website fundamentally, any good website, collects name and email. Maybe it's for a contact form, maybe an email newsletter sign up. Maybe you have Google Analytics, which collects IP address for monitoring your interactions with a website. Whatever the case is, collecting personal information now it is required by law to provide a privacy policy. So when taking a step back and thinking about it, privacy laws are pretty sweet from a human being standpoint. Hey, we have a right to tell companies, get rid of my data, and they have to listen. Like, that's something I think that's worth fighting for, without a doubt. The problem is that in America, we don't have one single privacy law. We have 23 proposed privacy bills, each on a state-by-state basis, and then we have several existing privacy laws as is. Each of these state privacy bills, some are replicas of others, some are just completely made up, like completely unique. That's made up is weird sounding.
Gotcha.
They're completely unique, but they're all based around the same thing. These state laws want to protect their citizens. And they're saying, hey, if you're a business, we don't care where you're located. If you are collecting the personal information of our citizens, you need to follow our rules. So as I said, having privacy laws are awesome for human beings. And I think in general, it's pretty cool for companies to respect people's privacy. The only issue that we see at Termageddon is that we think it's a little ridiculous that small businesses and nonprofits not only have to have a privacy policy on their website, but they also have to have a strategy to keep their policies up to date when these laws go into effect. And that's what we're trying to solve.
I was just going to say, Hans, the beauty and I think the importance of what you're doing and why I love what you're doing with Termageddon is I can't keep up with that crap. And not like web designers, we have enough on our plate to keep up with anyway, with the amount of changes and the fact that web design, just as you know, being an agency owner for a long time, it just moves so quick. There's no way you can keep up with all this stuff. And I don't want to hire a CPA or a lawyer to do all this for me for thousands of dollars a year. So right off the bat, I love that you have taken this approach to like help folks like myself with Termageddon because and to be honest, like this stuff is really important because I imagine you could open yourself up to lawsuits. You could open yourself up to all these compliance issues if you don't have this in place. So yeah, first of all, just hats off to you for doing this because it's very valuable. And yeah, I mean, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just wanted to explain the value in this and why it's so important. Like this episode is something that every web designer needs to hear because
100%.
It's honestly something that I'm trying to learn more about, which is why I'm so excited to have you on.
Awesome. No, I think that's great. And our model is built for web agencies. That's my background. I probably would have been a web agency owner forever if I didn't, get engaged to a privacy attorney who runs Termageddon with me. But the fact, our model, we give web agencies a free set of our policies, a free set of our auto updating privacy policies for forever, free. And we do that in the hopes that you are willing to take the time to protect your own website. We also do that in the hopes that you like our product enough to want to use our reseller or our affiliate programs to educate your clients on the importance of policies and hopefully use our service to help your clients get protected as well. We provide sales material. One thing that's really popular that we provide is a website policies waiver, where you give this document to your client, before undertaking a new website project saying, look, I'm going to be helping you. I'm going to be building systems for your website that are going to help you collect personal information. That does not mean I'm your privacy attorney. That does not mean I am here to handle your privacy law stuff. Sign this document, either signing up with Termageddon, either going out and finding your privacy policy or just choosing to do nothing. But either way, you're signing this document saying you are not that me, the web agency, is not responsible for your privacy law compliance. Because the reason why I think that waiver is so important, and just in general, this conversation, is that states like New York are proposing bills which will enable their citizens to sue businesses of any size in any location just for having a contact form on their website without a privacy policy compliant with that specific law. Like, let's put that into perspective. Like, any citizen in New York can sue any business located anywhere if they're collecting their personal information. That's a big deal. I mean, how easy is it to be a New Yorker if you're a bad guy, and go to, I'm not saying New Yorkers are bad guys. There's bad people within all areas. But if you're kind of a troll and you could just go and look at websites that have a contact form and don't have a privacy policy and just attack them with frivolous lawsuits, it's going to be a nightmare. And what I always say is, like, think about this. If you, the web agency owner, aren't having the discussion with your client about the importance of privacy policies, who is? Who's having that discussion with these small business owners who went to you for professional services? And I always say, like, even if you don't use Termageddon, still have the discussion about the importance of privacy policies with your clients. Because if I was a small business owner and I paid a company for professional web design services and then I got sued for not having a privacy policy, the next person I'm calling is my web agency being like, what the heck? Why didn't you tell me about this?
So let's break this down. So to start, like in the simplest form, as web designers and agency owners, what do we need? Do we need to have something in our contract? Do we need a privacy policy page that just states, hey, we collect your information as a client, or contact form? We have your, like, is that the best place to start, just to say what we have in place as far as what we collect as far as information?
So any good web agency should have a privacy policy in place, without a doubt, on their website. Your website represents your skills. It's your online resume, basically, to providing great services. So you need a privacy policy on your own website, without a doubt. The second thing I think you need is some sort of, in your existing contract or a waiver, like we discussed, some sort of document saying, like, I've made you aware, client, of privacy policy laws and the fact that privacy policies are important. And you're a business owner, you can take the risk, but it's up to you to decide what you want to do. But I'm out. I am not responsible for your privacy policy. So those are the two things I would stress to any agency owner.
So protect yourself as far as your website from potential legality problems with people either inquiring with contact form stuff, or just stating, that we have your information in a contact form like Gravity Forms or MailChimp or something like that. But then also it sounds like for your client perspective. So when you build a website for somebody and you build them a contact form that connects with their Constant Contact or MailChimp or something, again, like you just said, you're just stating you're not responsible for that. That's their end, which I know we'll get into what we can do to do both, to protect our agencies, but also our clients. But so that sounds like a great place to start. And are those things, because I could drop this stuff in the show notes for this episode, do you have resources for that are starting points, or is that state specific, or is that a little more?
Good question. So our agency program is one where we personally vet every single applicant, and then we give access to all of our assets. So I could give you a link to the agency partners page where people can apply, but we need to vet them and make sure they're legitimate agencies, and then we release the assets.
Gotcha. Release the assets. Yeah. And see, that's why, I think a valuable point you said in the beginning is the copying, pasting, or taking a template that was already out there. But to your point, the reason you have Termageddon is because that stuff changes constantly.
Yes.
Like, you have to stay compliant with these different states and the US in general, which I'm sure we're going to talk about global stuff as well. But yeah, it's obviously why this is super, super important for not only us as entrepreneurs and agency owners, but then for our clients as well. So privacy policy page would be, it sounds like the most important thing initially is just to say, here's what I have in place. And that's what I had to realize from my web design agency. And then also when I started joshhall.co, I did take some templatized, privacy in terms, but then I customized it to what I have in place. Yes, I collect your contact information when you fill out a form or when you buy a product, and then here's where it goes, just laying that out. So that's the easiest thing to do to protect our own butts as web designers. But what's kind of the next step, Hans? Is it as far as what we have their information connected with, how does that all work? How do we protect ourselves from using all these different third-party softwares and everything?
Well, these privacy laws, I always speak as a whole, because each and every single one of these privacy laws have these unique little disclosure requirements. But as a whole, privacy laws are out to protect the personal information of their citizens, and basically say, if you collect personal information on a website, you're required by law to have a privacy policy. And these are the disclosures you need to have. High level, what is the information you collect, with whom you share that information with, and do you sell that information? So information you collect is pretty straightforward. For most people I see go through our questionnaire. Name, email, phone number on a contact form. IP address on Google if you have Google Analytics installed. Obviously, if you have e-commerce, there's a handful, bit more information being collected, probably sharing that data with third-party payment processors. But name, email, phone number are the best. I think they're the most relatable. And I always say when a contact form gets submitted to, when someone submits a form on your website, what happens next? Does that data get automatically added to an email marketing system? That means you're sharing that data with a third-party email marketing provider. Does that email, when a form is submitted, does it get stored in the WordPress backend? You need to say that it is shared with content management systems. Does the data in the back end of the WordPress website, do you have any other parties like marketing firms or something that can see that data? Well, then you're sharing that data with parties that need to operate the website. So these are all examples of where a lot of people, I think, initially think, oh, I don't share data. I don't share data. When I think what they mean to be saying is I don't sell data, which is what most people don't do. Most people don't sell data. But sharing is super common in our industry. It's almost natural. And that's very important. You need to discuss, hey, when I collect your personal information, I'm sharing it with other companies. That's got to get disclosed because think about it as a human being. Like, rather than the business owner, think about it as a human. Like, if I submit my information, are you going to, I would like to know, is my information being sent off to like 30 different systems,
Yeah, I know a couple of years ago, I started working with a client, and it was funny. It just kind of took me off guard because they were like, we want to be sure that you're not going to sell our information. And I never had a client mention that to me. To your point, like, everyone I think knows it's going to be shared with other platforms, what other subscriptions that you use. But I never had somebody mention that. But then it made me realize they probably had a bad experience with a previous web designer or agency that sold their information, because that's very common. No, I don't know if it's as common in web design as much as other industries, where you get this email list of cold leads that you can reach out to, and that list just got sold to somebody. Like, that's not what most web designers do, but it is certainly something that you need to disclose, or I think ideally avoid. I would not recommend web people do that. But it was just really funny because he mentioned that to me, and I was like, of course I'm not going to do that. I'm never going to sell your stuff. So, but some people have gone through that. And that's why, like, when I've worked with lawyers and attorneys in the past, I'll just come out and say that's like it's the client that I not dread working with, but I don't enjoy working with, because there's so many legalities and stuff that they go through. But now, as I've been doing this for so long, I kind of understand why, because there's all this stuff that can happen with their information, leading back to privacy and, what they're protecting against. So, I think first of all, that's a great place to start and, to kind of talk about, because there is sharing versus selling, which most people are not selling, but most people are sharing. Yeah. So, I think one thing I wanted to mention here and kind of segregate is, can you just explain ADA versus GDPR? Can you just give us like a 101 understanding of that for people who, like myself, who are trying to like just stay up with this stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And I should note, law firms are one of our biggest client bases. And initially I would have never guessed that. I would have been like, well, why don't you just do it yourself? But I've reached out to a couple of them like, hey, couldn't help but notice you signed up for Termageddon. What's the deal? And they're like, look, I'm a divorce attorney. I know this privacy stuff is important, but I don't have the time to monitor these laws and bills. And so we have countless law firms that have joined our program. And I think that's pretty cool to see that.
It makes sense. It makes total sense.
Yeah, like that they're using a tool to generate that. All right, so
and we could take this one by one if that's easier. I'm kind of curious myself. I really don't know too much about this, so let's start with accessibility, the ADA. So ADA is the American Disabilities Act, and basically certain states have as I understand it, different laws as it relates to ADA. And accessibility with websites is becoming a very big deal. Making your website readily accessible to people with impairments, whether that be visual, audio. And
there are a set of rules that you need to follow to make sure every single web page is correctly structured to be accessible. Now, as you can see, I'm kind of very careful with my words here because we so often get the question, do you offer accessible ADA compliance and stuff like that? And we don't. We're in privacy. So it's a very different set of rules and everything. So ADA, accessibility, it's our number one request, and let's just say we're looking into it. But it is a very big deal. There is a growing number of accessibility lawsuits. I think everyone in the web agency world knows this. And the problem I see with web agencies is that we are going to have to balance out yet again another issue. The fact that accessibility, like for an agency to get, ADA like certified, which I think you can do through w3.org. And w3.org has an accessibility statement generator, just so you know. Which is real solid. But the problem I see is that web agencies are going to have yet again another dilemma where they're going to have to charge more to build accessible websites, or they're going to have to speak to the fact that they have a new practice, a new skill set where, hey, when we build your website, we follow these guidelines. But I don't think small business owners, for the most part, are willing to pay premiums. I feel like most small business owners are reactive. If they get sued, then they get angry that my website's not accessible. I'm upset. So, and that frustrates me because business owners, they say, oh, I want the website's the most important part of my business, but I have a fraction of a budget. And that's probably a whole separate podcast.
Well, but it's a great selling point that I found with maintenance plans. Because when I got into doing a maintenance plan and doing security, the reason for that was I had built websites, and then if people declined that, if they eventually got hacked, then it becomes important. Then they're like, crap, yes, I should have gone with your maintenance plan because my website just got hacked. So yeah, that's a good point. They're often reactive versus proactive, but what a great area that could be an upsell for agencies, and it can really make you look professional. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah, ADA compliance makes sense that it's kind of separate. Yeah.
Retainer was extremely important to me. Monthly revenues, extremely important to me. There's many accessibility tools out there, but the one that comes to mind right out the gate is Accessibility. Accessibility even has a agency program, I believe, where all they are is a piece of script you add to the top of a website, and it allows for people to adjust image contrast or text contrast and text size, and basically it adds a layer on top of your website and turns the website accessible, as I understand it. And as I also understand, they've never had a client been fined or successfully sued for ADA noncompliance. So I would check out Accessibility. It's basically the word accessible without the L.
Okay.
Accessibility.com. And I would attack that for the ADA stuff. And Josh, if you want me to bring I can connect you with Accessibility if you'd like me to.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
If you want to do an interview or anything.
Sure.
Now, GDPR, that was kind of the symbolic privacy law that brought us into this new world that we're in. GDPR is the General Data Protection Regulation, and it protects the residents of people in the EU, or the European Union.
Yeah.
And GDPR basically says, hey, if you collect the data from residents of European unions, people in the European Union, you need to follow these specific laws or these specific rules. GDPR is pretty sweet because basically an entire continent has one set of rules to protect all residents in that country.
I see. A lot better than state specific here in the U.S. than I imagine.
You nailed it. Nailed it. And that's the frustration we have. We have one set of rules. Like at first everyone was freaking out about GDPR. I think in 3 years we're going to be like, GDPR was the best thing ever, because now a small business owner in Chicago or Dallas or pick the city, they're going to have to probably they may have to comply with a multitude of privacy laws. So you would have to in America, you have to figure out what privacy laws you need to comply with. Where GDPR, if you're only servicing the European market, all you have to do is just follow one set of rules. America, you could have up to over 24. So
wow, okay.
So yeah, that's that. GDPR though, I love it because we had privacy laws prior to GDPR, but GDPR was just this explosive media everyone got behind it. And that's what spurred Americans to tell their governing bodies to like, hey, you need to create laws for me. I want to be protected. I want my data to be protected. And so America did it in America's own way. Now, we do have 4 federal laws that have been proposed, but even if one of those goes into effect, if you have a state privacy law that's more aggressive than the federal one, well, then the more aggressive one can go into effect. So
I see. And what should we do just on GDPR? Is what can we, for my US based audience, what do we have to do to be compliant with that? Is it just to, again, going back to just state what information we collect? Is that as far as we need to go from a legality standpoint, just to, be safe, or is there other stuff that we need to do?
So if you need to be GDPR compliant, and I want to note, if just because you have a website and you in theory could get traffic from people of the European Union, that doesn't necessarily mean you need to be compliant with GDPR. A lot of people have that mindset. Well, I have a website, therefore anyone from anywhere could visit my website. And that's not really what these laws are intended to do. It's if you're, soliciting people in the European Union. Okay. If you have clients in the European Union, those are better indicators if you need to be GDPR compliant.
I was going to say, because most of our clients are stateside, so I didn't even. One reason I didn't really, be super proactive about learning about that is because our clients are U.S. based. They're not going to work with people in the UK primarily, unless it's an e-commerce. And my site included, like my site, I've got clients from all over the world, or customers from all over the world. So I'm taking this like very seriously, which is why, I'm using you guys, and I'm going to be, really upping this on my end to make sure not only I'm protected, but my customers' information are protected, and everybody listening to this is protected as well. Like, yeah, I think that's huge. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off again here, Hans, but yeah, that makes total sense. Now, for what about my European students and my web designers who are there? What do they have to do if they are in Europe or anywhere, that needs to be GDP compliant? Yeah.
So just like GDPR is just like any other privacy law, where it doesn't matter where your business is located. So if you're in Europe, well, you pretty much need it. If you're outside of Europe, you got to think, am I targeting, soliciting? Do I have customers in Europe? But no matter what the case is, if you need to be GDPR compliant, a really good way to figure out what you need to do actually is going through a generator like Termageddon, because we ask the questions which will kind of lead, and we have little help buttons which kind of explain it further. But you have responsibilities now as someone who collects the personal information of residents of Europe. You have responsibilities like holding on to data. You now need a strategy to like delete data that you no longer collect after a certain amount of time. You need to discuss whether you have a data protection officer, which is a dedicated employee just to monitoring request access amendments or
I guarantee every single one of my students does not have a dedicated employee for accessibility and GDPR stuff, including myself.
That's fine. That's the other thing is a lot of people think, I have to have one. No, you don't. You can say, no, I don't have one, but you still need to disclose that you don't have
it. Gotcha.
And you still need to provide contact information, aka an email address, to let people know, hey, if you need to exercise your rights and ask, and maybe in these laws are out for their great purpose, why these exist. Like, maybe your name is Richard, and you're subscribed to an email newsletter, and you just want your name changed from Richard to Bill. You would make a request. Hey, can you change my name from Richard to Bill? And like the company's responsible for making sure that gets reflected in your email newsletter subscription.
That's a great point. I just want to hit on that for a second, because I know I run a Facebook group, Divi Web Designers, and it's over 21,000 people now. And I remember when the GDPR stuff started coming out, people were freaking out. And I saw so many designers, not all of them, but a lot of people were upset. They were like, what is this crap now? I'm going to have to, what am I going to have to do with all my sites and all this stuff? But I think that's a great point to remember. This stuff, it can kind of be a pain for web designers, but it can lead to more ongoing services. I mean, for my web design agency, it is a markup. We now upsell we have a subscription to Termageddon, but we upsell it, and it makes us look awesome because clients are like, what? They don't know anything about this, and we have to tell them, you have to be compliant. We need to update these privacy policies. They need to stay up to date. And then the client's like, wow, you guys are legit. And we're not really doing that much. We're relying on you and Termageddon. But I say that to say this is good. Like if you think about yourself when you buy something from Amazon or you online shop or you work with a service, to know that your information is safe is huge. So I just wanted to mention that for everyone to keep in mind that, yeah, this is complicated and adds another layer to web design. But at the end of the day, this is good. Like this is important.
Agreed. Yeah, I think this is turning a challenge into an opportunity. This is the ability to tell people, this is the ability to showcase yourself as someone who knows what, has a broad perspective about everything, not just how to build a pretty website or just how to build an SEO friendly website. It is a well-rounded person who understands their industry. This is just yet another step to making you a professional web agency owner. You nailed it on the head. I get so many agencies that say, I am shocked. My clients responded, thank you for looking out for me. Yes, let's sign up. I get that every day. And it's a great thing to know that, like, we hope to be agencies partners because we don't want you to think you have to be a privacy law expert and be knowledgeable about the extensivity of all these different privacy laws. I mean, we have attorneys that use our platform. Like, to think a web agency owner would need to know all those details, we think is ridiculous.
Sure. Yeah. So you may have mentioned this, Hans, but is there a resource for my audience who want to be GDPR compliant? I imagine you do that through Termageddon, but is there like a good starting point that people can reference just to make sure my folks in the UK and elsewhere are GDPR
I haven't
compliant?
really. Yeah, no, there's many GDPR like compliance guides. In fact, I think we have one on termageddon.com in our blog. I'll send you a link after this.
Okay,
after
perfect. I'll link that up. Yeah, I just didn't want to leave anyone hanging who is like, well, how can I get help with that?
For sure. And I would definitely say our questionnaire when generating the free license that web agencies get, it's a wonderful way to kind of get acclimated with reality.
Sure.
These are the things I need to follow because I collect personal information.
So, okay, I have one big question for you because I do not know too much about, well, digital cookies. I know quite a bit about delicious real cookies, but digital cookies. What do we have to do with that? Most every site now has that. Is that something that, can you just explain for people who are new to web design what cookies are and kind of how they work and why we need to disclose that?
Yes. So cookies, there are cookie laws, basically saying, hey, if you put cookies onto a browser when someone's visiting your website, you need to disclose that. And cookies became popular with GDPR because the cookie law came along with it. And what a website needs to do, or what a website operator needs to do, is they need to get consent from users to install non-essential cookies onto a browser. I don't know if that's overwhelming or not, but basically, you can no longer operate your website where things like Google Analytics are installed immediately. You have to get consent first, and that is if you process the data of residents of the EU, of the UK, or you need to be CCPA compliant, the California Consumer Privacy Act, which is for big companies. CCPA means to be CCPA compliant, you have to have more than 25 million in revenue. You have to process the data of 50,000 or more California consumers, households, or devices, or you need to derive 50% or more of your revenue from selling the personal information of California consumers. So that's what's required for CCPA to be required to comply with CCPA laws. So CCPA, GDPR, or the UK Data Protection Act, which is basically a replica of GDPR. If you have to comply with any one of those three and you have non-essential cookies being installed onto browsers, like Google Analytics is a great indicator that you have it, then you need cookie consent.
I was just going to ask, because I feel like I should probably know this, but is every website essentially housing some sort of cookie because your website is going to track somebody's movements? Well, I mean, you could do that with a bunch of third-party plugins, or not even stuff that isn't installed on your website. I know there's different ways to track stuff, but like if you have Google Analytics, that would be considered a cookie, right? Or would that be?
Google Analytics, yes, would install a cookie onto a browser. And you're right. Virtually all websites have cookies being installed. It's just, that's the world we live in. If you have WordPress, you're installing cookies. Yeah. And that's because cookies are not these like scary things. They're meant to help the website function correctly.
Yeah, because they're essentially, in the simplest form, is it safe to say that a cookie is just watching the user navigate through a website? Like it's just a way to track.
That's one. That's definitely.
There's different levels, right? There's different levels of tracking.
Yes, absolutely. So there's many ways cookies are utilized, helping a website function as a user moves through it. Like maybe they're logged into a website and they're moving between pages. Like you need to keep that session running. That's a great example of why cookies are essential. And basically, this cookies laws basically say you need to disclose which cookies are used. You need to disclose all the cookies that get put into a browser. And if they are essential to the operations of your website, meaning your website will break unless that cookie is installed, you can install those automatically, but you still need to inform the user of that. And then if you have non-essential cookies, like Google Analytics, maybe a active campaign that tracks movement on a website, you need to disclose those as well. And you have to have them. You have to have those cookies paused and not actually installed onto the browser until the user gives consent. Okay. When you see a cookie pop up, it's funny, you start to see this as a web agency owner. When you see a cookie pop up on a website that says, we install cookies on your browser, and you just have to click OK, you feel bad for that person because that person now created an annoying cookie pop up, because these things are annoying. Let's be real. They're annoying. They created an annoying little feature saying, we install cookies on your website, and the only option you have is to say is OK. That's not compliant with the law. So all you're doing is wasting your user's time. I mean, if you're not going to be compliant, you might as well not have one at all. Yeah. You have to get consent. You have to have people be able to click, yes, I am allowing you to install tracking cookies onto my browser. Now, everyone might be right now thinking, oh my God, how do I even do this? Don't worry. There are people that have figured that out. And now we at Termageddon have not implemented that feature because we've been really US focused and most of our clients don't require CCPA compliance, but we're looking into adding it into our own platform. But without a doubt, I would suggest cookiebot.com. Cookiebot.com, it literally scans your website, figures out what cookies you're collecting, and then gives you a piece of code to copy and paste into your web pages, and then you're done. And Cookiebot handles
awesome. That was my next question, was like, what tools are there available to do that? So cookiebot.com, that sounds great.
So yes, Cookiebot would be great. And just a heads up, I do have to sign off in just a few minutes here.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, you know what? I meant to ask about that. So
no worries. No worries.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Yeah, we've covered pretty much most of the main things I wanted to hit here as far as ADA, what that is, GDPR, cookies. Quick question about retargeting. I'm assuming we need to mention that as well if you have retargeting ads for Facebook. But is that a whole separate thing? Are there different laws for that, or what does that look like?
So it all falls into the same thing. And it's really important to note that privacy laws exist with specific disclosures. And then you may be working with a different, like with a company that says, hey, we want you to add this to your policy. So that's the balance you have to do. For retargeting via Facebook, that's one of the things that kind of falls into that cookie area.
Okay.
Where if you do retargeting and you have to have a cookie policy, meaning you have to be GDPR, UK, or CCPA compliant, then you need to disclose that to the users and have a cookie declaration page, which comes with Cookiebot. And then Facebook itself may say, hey, we want you to add this copy to your privacy policy as well, which you just copy and paste.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so one of my friends on Facebook posted, if it's cookies in the US, are they called biscuits in the UK? I thought that's pretty good. But yeah, I think it's cookies worldwide. But well, awesome, Hans. Thanks so much for your time, man. I know, like I said, this was kind of a spur of the moment podcast because we were just going to chat, and I was like, dude, let's just make a podcast out of this.
I loved it.
I don't want to have the same conversation twice. So this was great, man. I think I'm going to have a lot of links.
The amount of privacy conversations as much, just one time.
Yeah. It's not the most fun aspect of web design, but nonetheless, very important. It's why I was really excited to chat with you and bring you on. Where can people find more about you and what you're doing with Termageddon?
Yeah, so Termageddon.com, Termageddon.com. That's where it all starts. You can find our About page, learn more about Donata and I. You can go to our agency partners page, learn about the free license we give, plus the ability to resell and make a new recurring revenue stream and while protecting your business. Or you can reach out to me, hans@termageddon.com.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think we're going to set up a special link on my site that I'll put in the show notes in the description where I think we're going to offer for my audience, if you want to try it out, you can get a little discount through my link that I'm going to set up with you here. So I'll make sure that's linked in the show notes. But yeah, man, really appreciate your time on this. I imagine we'll probably do a follow-up episode at some point with some of the new things that are coming down the road. I think COVID, I don't know what you guys have seen, but I imagine the pandemic probably changed a lot of this stuff, right? With security and a lot of things going on.
More people are going online, and I mean, from all as we see is more people go online, more privacy laws get proposed. They kind of work hand in hand because, well, they're innate. So
yeah. Well, Hans, thanks so much, man. Looking forward to helping my audience with this. Thanks again. I'll make sure all this is linked in the show notes. And until next time, man, thanks for all you do, and excited to see how this helps everybody who listened.
Absolutely, Josh. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Cheers, man.
All right. Bye-bye.
Hey guys and gals, just wanted to pop in with a couple things before you head out. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast. I would love to hear your feedback, and it will also help other web designers find the show. Be sure to check out the show notes for this episode. Just go to joshhall.co, click on podcasts, and search this episode number, and you'll find all the links, descriptions, and resources we talked about. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, and you'll be notified when the next episode is live. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.